Hello guys, welcome to today's lesson. We will be simplifying irrational roots in this lesson. We will be using specifically quadratic functions, and we're going to be finding the roots using the quadratic formula. So that's how we're going to figure out our irrational roots. So let's go ahead and get started. So we have this function that equals x squared minus 8x plus 3, and we're trying to find the solutions. Remember that solutions are our roots. Solutions are our roots. There are zeros, and they're similar to our x-intercepts, okay? So don't get confused when you see that notation in multiple places. So we're going to be using the quadratic function, which looks like x equals the opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2a. And we're always referring to the function being in standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. So let's remember that always. So let's identify here what my a is. My a is 1 because that's the number in front of the x squared. My b is negative 8. And my c is positive 3. Alright, so now that we've identified all our variables, let's go ahead and plug it into the formula. So we're going to have x equals the opposite of b being negative 8. Be careful with the double negatives here. And then we have plus or minus the square root of b squared. So notice how I'm putting the parentheses around that. It's very important that you include the negative in the square if you're going to type this into the calculator or when you do your math. So minus 4 times a times c, like that. So I'm going to plug in my a. My a is 1. My c is 3. And it's all divided over 2 times a. And my a is 1, like that. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and simplify this. So I'm going to simplify in the next step. A negative and a negative gives me a positive, plus or minus the square root. A negative 8 squared is a negative times a negative is a positive, minus 4 times 1 times 3 is 12. So I'm going to write it like that. And then we have 2 times 1 is just 2. And I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to write it 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 12 is 52, all divided by 2. Now here, this is where we're going to do the simplifying. This is where the simplifying occurs. So simplify this irrational fraction, root, simplify more. It's kind of like simplifying a fraction. So let's go ahead and do this example. So we're going to have, in order to simplify this, we need to simplify or rewrite, break apart the square root of 52, like this. And how do we simplify a radical? So this hopefully will be reviewed, but if not, that's fine. That's why we're reviewing it together. I'm going to do a little factor tree. So I'm going to do 2 times what is 52? I believe that's 26. And then 2 times what is 26? 13. And then 13 is prime. I can't simplify that anymore. So technically, the square root of 52 is the same thing as the square root of 2 times 13. Notice that I just factored it. Sorry, I forgot you couldn't see it there. So we did the square root of 52 is equal to the same thing as 2 times 13 because that's how we factor this using our factor tree. And every pair comes outside. Every pair comes out as 1. So in other words, we're going to write this as 2 times the square root of 13 because it comes out. Think about it this way. 2 times 2 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So that's why we write the 2 on the outside. And then the square root of 13, you can't simplify that. Doesn't simplify because it's irrational. So you just leave it as the square root of 13. So going back to my problem, now that I simplified the radical, the square root of 52, I'm going to plug that back in up here. So I had 8 plus or minus, and I'm going to plug in 2 square root of 13. Notice how I simplified that? All divided by 2. And now I'm going to simplify this. This is a fraction. 8 plus or minus 2 square root of 13 is all being divided by 2. So I'm going to write it like this. I'm going to divide the 8 by 2. And I'm going to divide the 2 square root of 13 by 2. Because the 2 is dividing both terms. And then we're just going to simplify. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So this is just 4 plus or minus 2 divided by 2, because they're both on the outside of the square root, is 1. That's 1 and 1. So we just got the square root of 13. So there is my simplified answers. There is my simplified answers like that. And always remember that that does represent 2 different solutions. This is 2 different solutions. The first one being 4 plus the square root of 13, and the second one being 4 minus the square root of 13. So that is 2 different solutions because one's positive and one's negative. All right, so let's go ahead and try this example right here. We're going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula. So we have our A is 1. Our B is 5, and our C is -1. Again, doesn't matter whether they're uppercase or lowercase in the quadratic formula. So we're going to say x equals the opposite of B plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C, all divided by 2 times A. Notice that I left the blanks this time just to kind of make the process a little quicker. So I'm going to go in and plug in all my B's. My B is 5. My B is 5. My A is 1. And my C is -1. All right. And then on the bottom, my A is 1 as well. So we're going to go ahead and simplify it. So we have -5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared is 25. A negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 1 is just 4. And then we're left with 2 times 1 is 2. And I just realized I made a mistake. My A is not 1, my A is 5. There we go. I knew there was something wrong with this. So that means that this is not 1, this is 5. Okay. So that means that over here, this is not 4, this is 20. Okay, because my A was 5. I don't know why I put 1. So that's 4 times 5 is 20. A negative times a negative is a positive. So let me rewrite that. Apologize for that, guys. So we got -5 plus or minus the square root of 25 plus 20 over 2. There we go. That's right. Again, because my A was 5, not 1. So we had to put a 5 right there. I know a lot of you probably were like, what are you doing, Miss Cortez? So let's go ahead and simplify it some more. So we're going to have -5 plus or minus the square root of 45 divided by 2. And again, this is where we want to simplify our radical. We want to simplify the square root of 45. To do that, we're going to use the factor tree. I forgot to name it earlier, where we kind of divide into all our prime factors. So you start with 2. 45 times what gives you 2? 2 does not work. 3. 3 times 15 gives you 45, so that works. And then 15 is 3 times 5. And then 3, 5, and 3 are all prime. So I'm going to write it as the square root of 3 times 3 times 5. And then when we're simplifying radicals, any two prime numbers that are a pair come out as 1. So there's one pair of 3's, so it comes out as 1. And you're left with 5. Again, how can you think about this? Why does that work? Because technically you have the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. And the square root of 9 is 3. And then you're left with the square root of 5. So that's how you kind of get it. That's the math behind that. So now that we have it like that, let's rewrite it over here. We're going to have negative 5 plus or minus. The square root of 45 is going to be 3 square root of 5 over 2. And so here, this is typically where we divide it into two fractions. And let me show you what happens when I divide this one into two fractions. As you can see, 5 and 2 do not cancel out. They do not divide evenly. That's a fraction, a decimal. And 3 and 2 does not divide evenly. So the answer to this one, simplified, is this expression here. That is the answer simplified because you can't divide the 2 into the 5 and the 2 into the 3. So this one was actually already simplified once you simplify the radical. So let's go ahead and try a third example. So here's example number 3. Go ahead and try to do this one. Go ahead and try to do this one. Pause the video, use the quadratic formula. Alright, so hopefully you tried to do this one on your own already, and now we're going to do it together. So I'm going to have my A is 8, my B is 8, and my C is negative 3. Again, it doesn't matter whether they're uppercase or lowercase. And we're going to plug those into the formula. So we got x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. And then we're going to divide by 2 times a. So now I'm just going to fill in all my blanks. My b is 8. My b is 8. My a is 8. This time I got it right. My c is negative 3. And my a is 8. So make sure you don't make a mistake like I did in the other one. And now we're going to simplify this radical. So we got negative 8 on the outside plus or minus the square root of 8 squared is 64. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. 4 times 8 times 3, that's going to be 32 times 3. Let's do the math real quick. 96. All right, divided by 16. And then we're going to go ahead and simplify what's under the radical. So it's going to be negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 160 over 16. All right, so this one's going to be a little bit longer just because this square root is so big. So let's go ahead and simplify the square root of 160. And again, I'm going to start with my factor tree just like I did in the other ones. So I always like to start with 2. So what's half of 16? 8. But it's 160, so it's 80. And then I can't simplify the 2 no more. 80 is 2 times 40. 40 is 2 times 20. 20 is 2 times 10. And 10 is 2 times 5. So there's my prime factorization for this one. This one's quite longer, as you can see. So we're going to have the square root of, how many 2's is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you also have the 5 at the end. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 is 160. And now remember, guys, that we take out every pair of numbers that is the same as 1. So this is going to come out as 1, 2. This is going to come out as 1, 2. And then we got a 2 and a 5 that is left over because neither of those have a pair. So we're left with 2 times 5 under the radical, like that. Okay. So I had one pair of 2's came out. Second pair of 2's came out. And then 2 and 5 didn't have a pair anymore. So let's go ahead and simplify this one. 2 times 2 is 4 square root of 2 times 5 is 10. So that's how this one simplifies. 4 square root of 10 is the same thing as the square root of 160. Don't believe me? Go ahead and try that in the calculator. All right, so now that we got 4 square root of 10, and again, I told you guys this one's going to be a little bit longer, plus or minus the 4 times the square root of 10 divided by 16. And this is where we're going to see if we can simplify this or write it in a different way, in simpler terms. So we got negative 8. Remember that the 16 divides the negative 8, and it divides the 4 square root of 10 over 16. And this one does simplify just a little. Let's see how we can simplify it. 8 is divisible by 8, which gives us 1. 16 is divisible by 8, which gives us 2. So this is negative 1/2, like that. Then we have 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So we got plus or minus 1 square root of 10. Notice that I cut the square root of 10 in the numerator over 4. So that one didn't simplify as pretty as the previous examples, but it did simplify. Keep that in mind, that it did simplify. So there's our answer. All right. So again, remember that this is two answers. It's the plus and the minus, and you have to write it in simplest form. Hope this video helped. Hopefully you don't feel too overwhelmed. Just take it step by step. Have a good day, guys.